My clients always come to me knowing what their issues are. They say, I'm overeating, I'm procrastinating, I'm having affairs, I'm not starting my business, I'm yelling at my kids, I'm ruining my marriage. Welcome to the Trauma to Triumph podcast. I'm Annabelle Ingleton and I'm your host. This is a show that focuses on all things healing, growth, and transformation. From modalities to the best books, possibly some resources you've never heard about, and the best and new experiential therapies, products, and services that really offer true change and relief. We're talking emotionally, physically, and mentally, brain, body, and soul. I'm sharing with you the best in the healing industry. We're having conversations with therapists, coaches, healers, and entrepreneurs. I'm also going to be sharing with you interviews with my clients, people that have coached with me in my coaching practice, whether it be men and women in my one-on-one program, Trauma to Triumph, or women in my group coaching program, Bloom. I'm going to be pulling back the curtain so you can get all the behind-the-scenes details about where they started, what their biggest struggles were, what we did together, and how their life is different now. Was it worth it? All the ups and downs, and we're just going to get really honest about how this work made a big difference in their lives. So if you're ready for some honest conversations, painful truths, helpful information, and real practical tools that actually work, you're in the right place. Did I mention we cuss a little bit here? Let's get going and welcome. Hi, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Blooming podcast. I'm Annabelle Ingleton. I'm your host, and today we are going to get deep, and I'm going to take you guys back, not even back. I'm going to really share with you guys how I coach, why I coach this way, what kind of clients I work with, and the model and like the lens that I see all of my clients through, and how I decide to work with people or not. The reason I'm sharing this is because Bloom, my new group coaching program for women that helps women go from not confident, insecure, putting themselves on the back burner, people pleasing, procrastinating, to confident and being able to step into a room with so much self-assurance and going after their dreams. Well, the way we do that, the way that I do that is through a really unique and proprietary process that I have created over the 3 years of my coaching private one-on-one clients. And I want to share with you guys how I coach and what it is that I do with clients to help them get transformational change. You guys have never heard me talk about transformational change. We're going to talk about it today because I really want to dispel any of I want to really make clear the differences between me as a coach and other coaches out there. I think when you hear coach, you may think life coach or mindset coach, or just there's a lot of different types of coaches out there. I'm not a healer. I don't do woo-woo stuff. Like I do real neuroscience, research-based, result-oriented work that actually gets to the root cause issues of problems. And we don't just treat symptoms and put Band-Aids on stuff. And the reason I really want to share this because of Bloom is because I think, when you're making an investment in yourself and you're choosing a coach, it's not lost on me that it's a big investment, and not only is it an investment of your financial resources, but it's also your time and your effort. And you want to trust that the person you're working with knows what they're doing. And I think a lot of you who are deciding to work with me, or maybe you already are some of the people that got on board during the early bird last month to join Bloom. Some of you that are thinking about working with me want to maybe have never even worked with a coach before. And it's a big investment. And I want to make sure that you feel comfortable working with me and that you know that I'm qualified in what I'm doing, and then just understand how I look at clients as a whole and what my goal is with you. Everybody presents differently as people when they decide that they need assistance or help with something, and especially in terms of coaching or like therapy or just any type of thing like that. And so I think that when you know that you're unique or you're just different, or maybe you have an idea of what issues you're dealing with, you have these thoughts that like, is it going to work for me? I'm very unique and maybe I'm special and I'm just too different or too quote unquote messed up, or I've gone through too much stuff, or I've made too many mistakes, it may not work for me. And I want to reassure you that even though you come to the table with different experiences in your past or just different symptoms in your life and pain points now, that you can get a lot of relief from coaching and a lot of healing from coaching. So I want to explain who this is for. Not Bloom, but just like this episode. This episode is for people, like if you're a coach and you've been wanting to know what I do and how I do it, this is the episode for you. Like, you better take notes. You better listen to this many times over. You need to learn the stuff I'm talking about, Google it, whatever. Like, this is the episode for you. I've never pulled back the curtains this much. I tend to do really broad overviews about what I do because you're not going to, as a coach, people pay you for the processes and the transformation and the results you get them. And everybody has different proprietary methods or techniques or trainings or models or frameworks that they do to help clients. And everybody's different. And I think everybody does it in a way that usually they use the tools that worked for them. And I believe that the tools that worked for me are amazing and completely transformed my life. And not in the way that I think other coaches coach, and not for the reasons of the things that they do. This is, and so I'm going to explain what that means. And this isn't a podcast episode to talk about other coaches, judge any other coaching methods or techniques or frameworks or models. I just know that the work that I do is to get to the root cause issues. We don't treat symptoms. I don't do thought work, mindset coaching. That's not the kind of coach I am. That is literally treating symptoms. Your thoughts, the way that you think, are a symptom of other stuff. And if you are just changing your thoughts in order to feel relief, you're pushing a rock uphill. You're going against the root cause issue, and you're going to get what's called incremental change, not transformational change. And it's slow. It's a lot more discomfort, and it takes a really long time. So that's the difference with working with symptoms and going straight to the root. I go to the root with the type of work that I do, and I want to share this with you. So not only is it for people who are coaches or who want to be coaches, but it's definitely for clients. If you're considering working with me, I want you to really know that I know what I'm doing, and that the process that I take, the things that we do, and the change that you get is very different than working with other coaches. Okay. So let's get to it. So I'm going to take you back a little bit because you have to understand what creates a problem so you can understand how I coach. And so I'm going to take you there. All right. So you have to understand that symptoms, when you come to coaching, when you come to therapy, when you hit rock bottom, usually it's because life feels hard. You feel stuck. You feel like you're not doing the things you want to do, or you're doing all the things that you don't want to do. It feels and looks like self-sabotage. I don't like using that term. I use it colloquially with you guys because I know that it resonates with you guys and you guys understand what that is. That's not what's going on. That's like what society has called it, but that's just how it looks and feels. That's not really what's going on. So that's what people tend to do how you guys tend to feel when you think it's time for coaching or therapy. And it's like, my relationships are a mess. I'm choosing the wrong people. I'm not making the right decisions. I'm procrastinating. I'm not taking action. I am overspending. I'm over drinking. I consciously know what I want, and I'm doing something completely opposite. And it's so frustrating because I feel like something else is driving me and it's not me, and I need to get this fixed. So this is what life looks like and feels when it's time. This is when clients come to me. This is for other people, like when you decide to get therapy, right? So also emotions feel really painful, right? You're experiencing a lot of negative emotions or unpleasant emotions that you can't manage or can't deal with. Also, relationships are like maybe falling apart or just not being sustained, and they feel like you're throwing a wrench in things. And just most of the areas of your life, you're surviving and you're not thriving at all. So again, these are all symptoms of a deeper problem. Because here's the question I want to ask you. If you consciously know what the problem is, like you're like, Annabelle, this is what I'm doing. I need to stop doing this. And you know what you need to do. You know what the solution is. And some people even know like how to get to the solution, like what steps to take to get to the solution. And you're not doing it. Why not? And so most people, what they do is they sometimes hire coaches that teach them how to like override themselves. That's what I call it, but I'll get clearer on what that means in the podcast. And they say, just help me make myself do it. And it's sheer force, sheer motivation, pushing a rock up a hill. That's what it feels like for people. And I've done this before and it worked for a little while. And then you burn the F out and it doesn't work after a while. So that's the first part. So these are symptoms. So usually the symptoms are, I know what I should do. I know what I want to do, but I'm not doing it. And I start every week and then I just freaking quit. I'm not consistent. What's wrong? What's going on? Why can't I do this? So these are symptoms of a deeper problem. And the problem is that you have another part of you driving the behavior. Consciously, you want to drive the car and you have something else driving. You're like, so who's driving the car? What do you mean there's a different part of me? Well, that's exactly what I mean. There's literally a different part of you driving the car, and whoever has the stronger belief wins, and that's who gets to drive. And I want to offer that the reason you're not doing what you want to do, even though you know how to do it, is that there's another part of you that feels that it's more imperative and necessary that you do something else, that you do quite the opposite. You do the thing that you actually are doing, whether it's procrastinate or Netflix and chill or just scroll on Instagram or just, drink or whatever, go back to the ex-boyfriend, eat the cookies, whatever it is. That's what they deem necessary. So who is driving the car? We're going to get there, but first let me tell you about the process. And there's a lot of terms that I'm going to cover. Every single every single thing that I cover in this, every like concept that maybe you've never heard me talk about is in the show notes. And, I want to be really clear. This is something that, I haven't shared before because I want you guys to know like what your problem is and what you need to do to solve it. And then who you should go to for help and hey, hire me, right? That's usually been my way of marketing. But in this episode, I'm kind of going to peel back the curtain and go a little bit behind the scenes because I want you guys to actually see what I've been trained in, what I know, and how I apply that in my coaching and what I do to help you. I'm not going to explain the techniques, but I'm going to explain what my goal is with my clients and the way I see you guys, because it's very different than I think any other coach sees people. I've been trained by psychotherapists. I've been trained by amazing professors and researchers. And I learn and get trained like a therapist, and I study like a therapist, and I treat my clients as if I was a therapist. Obviously I'm not, but it really, what it does is I learn from the best in the field that actually create transformational change for people. And that's how I work as a coach. All right. So these issues that you're dealing with are created by some type of disconnection, some type of experience in your past that was painful, emotionally charged, or shocking enough to your brain and your body that it was a novel experience, like it was new and you had never experienced something like this before. And it created an emotion that was really strong or unpleasant that you weren't able to fully complete or fully process in the moment. And because of that emotion, the feeling that you weren't able to complete, meaning process, it essentially what it's quote unquote, it gets stuck in your brain and your body. It's like this nervous system, like this stuckness. And when you get stuck like that, when a process isn't fully realized, meaning the brain needs to complete the process of emotional, like any kind of memory or an experience. So when you don't process it, you get stuck essentially. And so what does stuck mean? Well, stuckness means you're whole when you're born. You're like a puzzle all put together and you're like this whole puzzle, this amazing puzzle. And when experiences like that happen, you get fragmented and you break off into all these different pieces of puzzles. And all these different pieces of puzzles have each, if you look at it, like each puzzle piece has different aspects to it. It has its own behaviors, its own emotions, its own fears, its own desires, its own needs, its own thoughts and concepts and stories and predictions about the world. Every single one of your fragmented pieces. So this happens, you break off into these pieces every time you have experiences like this, because your brain says this is a very important experience because Annabelle was so like freaked out or happy or whatever it is. And sometimes experiences are like happy and you remember them and you never want to forget them. Your brain says, I want to remember that for the rest of my life. That was so important. And so what happens is your brain stores that in what's called implicit memory. And it says, we don't want to forget this because it was important, good or bad, but important, safe or threatening. We need to remember it. And it's very important. So those fragmented pieces, now they each have all those traits, but they also have this stuckness. And the stuckness means that they are stuck in that emotion that didn't get to be completed. Remember, every emotion needs to be processed, logically understood, and there needs to be some like resolution to it. Everything, relationships, issues, problems, story, everything. We want resolution. The brain needs completion. It needs it to feel safe and sane. Otherwise, it feels threatened and a little kook. Okay. And I don't mean, I say that very genuinely, like, and in a kind way. I don't mean it to be like I'm talking crap. Like that's literally what happens. So we need that completion. And when there isn't a completion, when the survival state isn't fully realizing you didn't get to protect yourself in the way you needed to, whatever capacity that is, in a relationship, you didn't get an explanation about why someone cheated on you. If you were hurt, you didn't get an explanation about why that happened. If you were abused and you didn't understand why. If someone died and you didn't get to say goodbye, like those things are you get stuckness. So you need to process them. Fragmented pieces. But what's, again, that fragmentation keeps you alive, it keeps you safe, and it keeps you sane. So it's necessary for your psyche, for your evolvement, for your healing. This also happens when you didn't get that connection from your parents as children, that neglect, unintentional or intentional, the attunement, the safety, the soothing, the emotional regulation that your parents should have taught you how to do. And if you didn't get that, you don't have the ability to have your own resolution or to learn how to process your own emotions. So you're constantly getting stuck. Okay. So now you have all these fragmented pieces, and these, each part or state, we call them parts or states of mind, or, however you want to call it. They each have their own, what's called like a neural net, a map, a mental model, whatever you want to call it. It's like this own little story. Professionally or psychologically, it's called a schema, and you will hear me call it schemas from now on. And I will refer to them always as schemas. So these schemas help all these fragmented pieces. Each of them has its own based on the experience it had. And the schema has a prediction about how things work, what you need to do to protect yourself, to help you help somebody else, like your group, or to make you feel better. So these schemas, again, I'm going to repeat that. A schema is this part of you that experience now has a schema, and the schema is predictions of what will happen, how you need to behave in that moment so that you can protect yourself, you can protect your group, or so you can feel better. You can feel safe. So each of these has its own. You can have a lot of these, and these are like, basically they're called beliefs. Okay. And they're held in implicit memory. And I'll explain what that is in a bit. So we have now these stored mental concepts about each of these parts have stored mental concepts about the world, predictions, how things work, what you need to do to protect yourself, protect others, all these different things, right? And again, these are schemas. So I'll give you an example. A young child. If you were raised in a home where your parents worked a lot, both of them, let's say they worked from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. every night, and you grew up where your parents said, you got to wake up every morning and you're going to get ready and you're going to eat breakfast and you're going to get dressed and go to school. You're going to walk to school. You're going to go to school. You're going to come home. You're going to do your homework, going to make dinner so that when I come home, dinner's made and then we have money to live and survive. This happens for a lot of children. This is called parentifying a child. This is when they're very young and they have responsibilities that an adult has. So let's say this happened to a young child. This would create this example of their schema might be, no one's there to take care of me, so I need to be independent and I need to take care of myself. I need to do things in order to feel safe. I can't depend on anybody else. I need to depend on myself. I need to be in full control all of the time. So let's say that's that young person. That's what that part of them believes. And they went through this very young. So it can be very daunting on a child to experience this. And because of that, it is something that is learned and it's learned behaviorally, emotionally. And this is the part of the brain. This is the right part of the right hemisphere of your brain that learns this. And it will store it. Again, it stores it in implicit memory because it says this is very important and we need to survive. So we need to remember this. So now this is that schema for that part of that person. And great. Like it's helping the child. So these models, these mental models or these schemas live in implicit memory. Other people call it, and I've used this term many, many times I use it again because colloquially people understand what it means. And it's like the subconscious mind. Okay. So, but these mental models, these schemas as an adult, they can end up hurting you. Why? Because when you were younger, this belief that schema really helped you stay safe and secure and alive in that context when you were like 7 to like 15, let's just say. So it helped you adapt to the environment that you were in. So it was very, very helpful. But as you grow up, two things change that are very, very important. You're an adult now. You're not 7, let's just say, and you're not in the same environment. Two really big differences, right? You're not in the same environment. Let's say you're like 40 and you're married with kids and you're an adult now. So you believed that you had to take care of yourself back then because you were a kid and it was so necessary. And you had to be in control all the time and you had to not talk to strangers and be really independent and just do everything. But it's a little different when you're older because you have different resources and you're older and you have different environments, right? So that behavior, that schema can hurt you when you're older. Here's the thing. It's starting to create issues in your life. And let's say I'm going to read from this. I wrote these notes earlier, so I want to read them to you guys because I think it's really, really helpful. So how does a mental map or this schema hurt you as an adult? Now, let's say, okay, well, being in control and taking care of yourself is really helpful. I'm not relying on anybody. Isn't it good as being an adult, right? So let's say what's happening is your husband is always mad at you because you work a lot. And you always work because you believe you have to do it all at your company because you're an entrepreneur. You do it all because you're doing the work even though you hire employees. And because you believe that others can't help you and they probably can't do it right, let's say you micromanage them. And now that you micromanage them, they feel judged and incapable and not supported by you. They don't feel like you trust them. And because of that, they kind of take their foot off the gas, and they don't really do the work at their best because they start thinking, Annabelle's going to get mad at me. She doesn't judge. She doesn't trust me. She thinks I'm doing a bad job. Oh my gosh, am I doing a bad job? Am I doing it wrong? All these things, right? So now they don't think they're doing a good job because they start feeling like you're always judging them and they can't work autonomously because you're just going to come in and override or change anything that they do. So now they don't trust themselves to work autonomously and have their own ideas and creative ideas that would probably really help the company. And they feel insecure at work and controlled by you. And then they quit. And then they leaves you with a self-fulfilling prophecy of you continuing to have to do the work, which will slowly ruin your marriage, right? Because you're always working and you're never present for your relationship. And then your marriage breaks down because you're always working. Because you have this deep schema, this deep belief that I need to do it all myself. Nobody else can do it. I need to be in control. No, I can't trust anybody else to do it. I'm putting myself in a really vulnerable situation if I leave anybody else because all I know is that I have to do everything myself. Not healthy, right? You could see how an adaptive behavior that helped you when you were a child is maladaptive when you're an adult. But you can't stop. even though you want to, and you say, well, I hired employees, babe, like to help me. What the F? Like, why aren't I letting them do it? It's because you don't even know that there's a deep implicit belief actually driving your car instead of you, conscious adult, 40-year-old entrepreneur, married wife, right? You don't even know you have it. So let's explain what is implicit memory. What is this belief? So first I have to explain what explicit memory is and what implicit memory is. So explicit memory is like recall. It's autobiographical. It's memory that you can like think about and grab and get the information. So if somebody asked you, how old were you when you learned to ride a bike? You would say, you'd kind of like look in your memory files and you'd find the answer. And you'd say, I think I was like 6 or 7. Yeah, I remember I was in the city and, oh yeah, I remember my dad, teaching me how to ride a bike. That's explicit memory. It's autobiographical. It's episodic. There's a date stamp on it. You know when it happened and like what it was there, and you could consciously recall it. That's the like operative word. You can right now consciously recall that memory. Implicit memory is very different. Implicit memory does not have a date stamp on it. I've talked about this before in a couple past episodes. So these memories don't have date stamps because they didn't get a date stamp, because the reason when they got stored in implicit memory, and things that get stored in implicit memory don't have date stamps because it was emotionally charged or really powerful, like a really novel event. And what typically happens in those situations is we were in some type of stress response. And when we're in a stress response, your hippocampus goes offline with the prefrontal cortex. And you need your hippocampus online in order to put a date stamp on it, because that's what we use for recall, for autobiographical memory. And if that's not online, it doesn't get a date stamp on it. And so these implicit memories get stored as memories, but we don't have a date stamp on them, which is really, really important. And they're stored with like these experiential faculties to them. So they're more like felt. They have like emotions, behavioral sensations, images, but they're fragmented. They're in bits and pieces. They're not coherent. They're not like logical, and they don't have a timestamp on them. And the way that they get recalled, like, the way we're able to recall an explicit memory, consciously decide to choose it, we can't consciously choose to recall an implicit belief or implicit memory. They get recalled when something in the present moment feels like you felt in that moment when that memory was stored. And what we call it now in the world is you get triggered. It triggers that past implicit memory, and that memory starts driving your car, is what I like to call it. That past implicit memory it gets activated, and it's like, again, it doesn't have a timestamp. So when what's happening right now, that part of you wakes up and it says, oh my gosh, this thing that's happening right now feels just like this thing that happened in the past. So my schema that I had back then, I need to use that to deal with what's happening right now. And you consciously, what happens as an adult, like in this present moment, let's say I'm fighting. Let's recall it back to like the example I gave earlier. If somebody wants to try and help me now, and they're like, come on, I'm gonna pick dinner. I surprised you. We're gonna go on a trip. And I'm like, what? What do you mean we're gonna go on a trip? And it's like, yeah, we're gonna go on, we're gonna do something fun. And because let's say this younger part of me, that part of me that was like left alone to do everything on my own, and its fear is, remember, the story it tells itself is no one else can have control, because if someone else has control, then we're not going to be safe, because our belief now is I have to always be in control or else something bad will happen, or else I'm vulnerable to deep pain. Now, when someone tries to change that, it activates this part of you that says, we need to be in control. What do you mean? We have to be in control. And this implicit belief, this schema starts kind of like, we start driving or being led by this part of us. And it's not helpful, because let's say your husband tried to surprise you with a vacation, and because you weren't in control of it, you don't know how to manage it because you've never had this experience before. And your belief is such that nobody else can help me here. Nobody else can be in control. I am in such a dangerous place. If someone else drives my car, if someone else is in charge, I'm vulnerable to getting hurt. I don't even know what this is like. And if you think about it,
this is created from a part of you that no one ever did anything for you. You had to do everything yourself. So when you have an experience when someone's trying to do something for you, it feels really volatile. It feels really scary because you're not familiar with this. What you're familiar with is no one being there for you and you doing everything for yourself. So an instance where someone's trying to quote unquote control you can feel very scary, and it will waken up that part of you that says, no, it's a protective part that's protecting that younger part that experienced that belief. And we say, no, we can't let you. And then we ruin it. And then the relationship, let's say, can fall apart. This is why our implicit beliefs are the maladaptive behavior that comes out of implicit memories or from these schemas is really harmful for us now as adults because it doesn't serve us in this context as adults that are in relationships, that maybe have kids, that have employees, that have all different responsibilities. So it's okay. We have different resources. We can let people help us, right? You don't have to be in control all the time. So this is why these things matter and how they can hurt you now as adults. So you might be asking, well, Annabelle, you described it really well. And it sounds like you know where implicit beliefs are and how they hurt us. So can we just change them? Are they accessible? How can we change the behaviors and the beliefs attached to those schemas, to those parts of us? Well, up until about 15 or 20 years ago, researchers and doctors believed that you weren't able, or they actually just didn't know how to change memory or change these schemas attached to these implicit memories. But now, after a lot of research, there is a way to do it. It's this amazing thing called memory reconsolidation. And I'll explain that in a little bit. But in the meantime, I want to show you before doctors and researchers created and found out how to actually go in and change a memory and the schemas and the neural nets attached to it and the behaviors and emotions attached to it. Before that, there's a lot of great doctors and researchers. And because they thought, well, we can't change implicit memories and beliefs, then we just need to learn how to work with them and against them and kind of like override the beliefs that those parts of us have. And things like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and like mindset and thought work were created so that we can see that, okay, what the idea was, wow, you want to do this thing, but you're doing this other thing. And so Annabelle, let's say, for example, let's keep with that same theme. I want to let people help me, but it feels really hard. So how do I let people help me? And maybe a therapist will tell you, well, it's safe to let people help you, but you're thinking, in my body, it doesn't feel safe. You just have to remember that this man loves you. And if you keep doing the old behavior, it's ruining your marriage. So don't do it. And patients were taught or were helped with therapists, again, very well-intentioned, working to override those thoughts. And again, it's like pushing a rock uphill. What that does is you still have the belief, and then you have this new thought that just let people help you. I say, I can't let people help me or I'm going to die. It feels too painful. I need to be in control. But then your doctor says, your therapist says, let people help you. It will keep your marriage safe and it's necessary, or else your marriage is going to fall apart. They can help you. You don't let go a little bit. And now you have these two different, completely opposing thoughts and beliefs sitting right next to each other. And what that does is it just really confuses people even more. And it can help you for a while because when you're on the verge of you're getting a divorce or your marriage breaking up or your business falling apart, you may acquiesce and you may say, okay, I'm just going to give up a little bit. But it can feel it can feel like you're working uphill, pushing a rock uphill, because in your nature, it feels almost so painful to do it because a deeper part of you knows that it's not safe. So you could do it for a little bit, but people always burn out and they go back to their behaviors. The reason is this creates, doing it this way, you're working against force, like you're forcing things to happen. So you're kind of working against yourself. And it creates change, but what's called incremental change. Because what they do is they give you what's called counteractive knowledge or counteractive information. It's counter. It sits next to the deeper pain or belief that was there before. And it's like having a pile of poop. And then you have a really cute pink bow that's going to make things better. But now you have a pile of poop with a big pink bow on it. It's still there. It just has a bow on it. And you're just you kind of pushed it down a little bit flattened it up a little bit, the poop. So it's you're trying not to pay attention, but it's still there. So it creates incremental change, slow change. and it may not even work. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. And it's really takes a long time and it's really painful. We have to use a lot of force and motivation. Okay. So they mean well, but it's just not helpful. I mean, it just doesn't work. So that's the difference between incremental change. So let's go back to like the doctors and how they figured out how to access those beliefs and what they discovered and how it works to change these deeper implicit beliefs and schemas. So 15 or 20 years ago, there was a lot of research done with rats on how to literally go in and change the beliefs. And it's Dr. Bruce Ecker is one of the leading doctors that figured out how to do it in therapy. And he's amazing. And I worked under him as well and mentored from him and his team. And he calls this transformational change. So transformational change is permanent and it lasts forever. Like it's fast and it lasts forever. What is amazing about it is it uses this process called memory reconsolidation to change the beliefs. So first, I want you to understand how memory is stored so you can understand what reconsolidation is. When you have a memory, first it's in short-term memory and then it's in long-term memory. It gets placed in long-term memory if the brain believes that this is an important thing to remember, or you do it a lot of times, then it says, okay, we need to remember this. Okay. So we need to consolidate it and put it into make it a neural pathway, basically is what happens, but we store it. So it's called memory consolidation, and they use a process called protein synthesis to consolidate a memory. And what happens there is, this is just an analogy, but this is the best way that I can explain it, is this memory or this event or this experience, it kind of gets placed into like, in a computer when you have a file and then you create a zip file. So it gets kind of like encoded even deeper. So it's not easily accessed or you can't modify it. It gets with protein synthesis. It's kind of like it gets into a zip file and it goes deep into long-term memory through that process called memory consolidation. And so now it gets stored, okay, into long-term. So researchers found out through the research with rats that there's a process that if they activated the memory in a rat and they did this thing with protein synthesis, they put a protein synthesis blocker basically so that you can't remember the memory. It deactivates it. It makes the memory labile, which means it makes it, you can edit it. You can change it. It makes it editable. It puts it in an editable format. So if you think about it, it's like opening the zip file and now bringing it up so you can now work in that folder and edit that file. That's what this protein synthesis thing that they discovered in rats after many, many years of research. And so memory reconsolidation is about reactivating the past memory and then giving it some type of protein synthesis blocker, and then unzipping the file essentially to make it labile and changeable. And then you can edit it and put a new belief or a new memory in there and it can change it. And then you have to reconsolidate it and like essentially zip it up again and put it away. And then now it has a whole new schema, or there's a new understanding to that memory. Okay. So after many years of research, that's what they've come up with. And it's an amazing thing. Memory consolidation is so amazing. And so it lets us access old memories, activate them. And so the two main points of memory reconsolidation is reactivation of a memory and disconfirmation. So if you reactivate a memory and you create it with a disconfirming experience, you have 5 hours after you unzip that file that memory is labile and it's editable and you can change it. And within those 5 hours, you present the mind with a disconfirming experience of that past event. So an opposite or disconfirming or something that disproves the earlier belief in the earlier schema, then it rewrites it completely and it becomes permanent and it changes and the behaviors and the thoughts and the emotions associated with that implicit memory is completely changed and it creates transformational change. It's simple. It sounds simple. It's like these steps, but you have to be trained in this and there's ways to do it. And there's a lot of amazing, therapies that have learned how to, that have the process of memory reconsolidation built into their experiential therapies. Things like AEDP and IFS, internal family systems, they have this method and the process that they do the work. it activates a memory, and there's the process of memory reconsolidation is built into their therapy. Okay. So, it's really amazing. And this is what I use in my coaching practice. So I've been trained in this, and it's not just a therapeutic tool. Memory reconsolidation can be used by anybody. You just have to be taught how to do it and taught how to do it in a particular way. And this is what I use with my clients to help them with their beliefs. So I want to go over again what I talked about in the beginning to reinstate what I just explained so that you understand that past experiences create fragmentation in the psyche and the body, right? All these different puzzle pieces that get fragmented, and it creates all these different states of mind or parts. All these different parts of you create different mental models or schemas for the environment that they're in order to adapt and be safe and survive. But when you get older, a lot of these schemas create a lot of behavioral tendencies and emotions and ways of thinking and ways of acting that actually hurt you now as an adult. And these are the things that people come to work with me for. And you don't realize what's going on. You just feel like you're on autopilot, essentially. That's what an implicit memory does, is it kind of puts you in autopilot, because what happens when those implicit memories get activated is you don't know that you're reacting from that place. You just know, like, it doesn't feel like the past. It feels like a current experience. And that way, that's why you don't even know that you're being driven by that belief or that schema or that part of you. So this is how therapists and coaches trained in memory reconsolidation or this type of work help people deal with all these behaviors and these emotions, these maladaptive behaviors that are really hurting their lives and really ruining them or keeping them really stuck to live out their life fully and bloom and evolve and grow. So, now, as a coach, I see my clients through this lens. I see all my clients, they come to me with these behaviors. And I heard one of my mentors say, she said this in such a great way, because her father is a psychotherapist. And one of his friends, one of them said this, and I thought it was so great. He said, people come to you, like when you're a coach or a therapist, they come to you with their solutions. They don't come to you with problems. And I thought it was a really great way of explaining these maladaptive behaviors, because when I see a client that is overeating or procrastinating a lot or has a rage issue or shuts down and isolates herself, this is her solution to keep her safe in an environment that she thinks is hurting her. So it's a solution that, again, helped her at one point, but it's hurting her now. My clients always come to me knowing what their issues are. They say, I'm overeating, I'm procrastinating, I'm having affairs, not starting my business, I'm yelling at my kids, I'm ruining my marriage, I'm working too much, I'm not resting. And they know that these are the things that are hurting them. They just can't stop. And they feel really, really frustrated because they don't understand why. They know that they should stop doing it, but they're not stopping. And that's why I say that my clients come to me with their solutions. And so what I tell myself is, how is overeating helping my client? How did it help her at one point, but it's not helping her now? How did procrastinating help her at one point, but it's not helping her now? How did not being vulnerable and isolating herself and being super independent helped her at one time, and it's not helping her now? And so this is how I see my clients. I see them through that lens, and it's my job to understand and take them through the process that I take my clients through to help them learn and help me learn, obviously, what were the things that were happened in their life that created these schemas that helped them at one point, but now are very maladaptive. And I don't think this is how a lot of coaches do their work. They work really differently. They just deal with this. They just work with the symptoms instead of the root. And you could see how mine is very, very different. And so I look at my clients, they come to me with like this bag of puzzle pieces. And they're like, I look at them like, okay, these are all their puzzle pieces. They show up with their solutions, right? Their behaviors that are causing them issues. They have their bag of pieces of their puzzle. And it's my job to help them see that they're fragmented, and how do we get them whole again? How do we get them to understand all these different parts of them and their experiences that happened that created all this fragmentation, so we can get them back to be whole again? Because what we want, my goal with them is to have them be in what's called integration. Integration is wellness, integration is health. Integration is emotional regulation. Integration is safety. Integration is trusting the world, trusting themselves, trusting people. Integration is complexity. It's living out of your higher self. And you are doing this when you're whole. This only happens when you're in your whole state. Again, what I always call your higher self, but when you're whole and you're integrated, that's the goal. That's the goal of all coaches. But most people come to me in disintegration and in fragmentation, right? Their bag of puzzles and their solutions. So, and they also have a lot of unpleasant emotions, and these unpleasant emotions are like anxiety or anger or depression or fear. These are the main ones that most people, and there's some type of those emotions, and or insecurity, not like lack of safety. And what happens with these is society has learned to treat them with medication, and that's like it's a Band-Aid. Again, it's like treating the symptom. You're just treating the symptom. If you came to me with a big wound that's deep and needs surgery, if a doctor just put a Band-Aid on it, you would say, what the F are you doing? I am in pain. There's like something going on. You need to like sew me up, like help me deal with the problem. And medication treats the symptom of anxiety, but you can see that there's a deeper issue. And because a lot of people don't know that you can actually get to the root of the problem, which is these implicit parts. And you have to go deep and you have to understand these implicit parts of you that were created as a result of these painful experiences that you had in life. And that's what actually, when you have this knowledge of all these parts, it creates integration. So I'm going to explain what this is. So people show up, and I call it people show up with their bag of puzzles and all the pieces. They're in disintegration, right? They're not whole, and they're in either chaos or in rigidity. So like the earlier example that I shared, let's say you're ultra independent. Let's say that's the symptom. That's how you're showing up. And you start feeling, you have that feeling of it's not safe to trust others. You can't get close. You can't be vulnerable, either emotionally or physically. So you can't share your emotions. You can't share your thoughts. You can't share your body. You can't share your home. Nothing is worth or safe about, or maybe even communicate. You can't share your words. You don't even know how. You're not open, you're closed off. So that looks like rigidity. What happens there is your brain and body start to change as a result of this fragmentation. So not only are you in puzzle pieces, like you're fragmented, but then your brain and body change as a result of your past. So let me explain how that happens. How I explain that person right now, they're in rigidity. They're in like this rigid state where it's very controlling. And what happens is your brain and body, as a result of that, start learning that it's not safe to feel, right? To have emotions, and emotions are in your body. So what is safe is to be in control and manage and analyze and think and plan and strategize. So where are you? What part of your body does that? And that's your brain. That's your left brain specifically. So it teaches you that you have to be in your left brain all the time and think and not be in your feelings. If anything, vulnerability and being in your feelings, there's so much threat there, because if you're vulnerable and you let somebody in or get close, or you like them or you fall in love, you have a chance to get hurt again and be alone like you were when you were younger. So that can't happen. So maybe now that when the only way that you can be vulnerable, because let's say if you want a romantic relationship with someone or a friendship, you do have to get close. You have to trust each other. You have to share. And let's say the only way that you have found that you can be vulnerable is when you shut your brain off. And that's when you're not in control anymore. You kind of numb your brain off. How do you do that? A lot of people have found relief with drugs and with alcohol. And so let's say now you drink a lot in order to shut your brain off so that you're not in this over managing, controlling part. But now the only way that you get close to people is when you're drinking. And now maybe you start seeing like, oh my God, I actually get to get close to people. And this feels good when I'm in it. Yeah, it feels scary, but I do want to get close. So you start drinking a lot. And now the drinking causes issues. Dissociation is also another form of dealing with your thoughts. You don't want to feel the pain or feel the thoughts. And so you can dissociate and you can kind of leave your body so that you're not in your brain or your body. And it's like a way to manage between chaos and rigidity. It's dissociation. And what I love how Nicole LePera calls it, she says that she puts herself in like her little mental spaceship. She kind of floats up in the air and just dissociates. A lot of children do this when they're younger. It's a way that the psyche does this for children so that they can stay safe in an environment that's very hurtful or toxic or very threatening. That's that rigidity state. So, or you're either in that anxious, you lean more towards towards anxious, and this is what we call chaos. And if you lean more towards chaos, you have a lot more anxiety, you're anxious, you're very in your feelings because someone that is more anxious has learned that someone, maybe in their youth, they learned that they really need to be with people. They learned that, oh my gosh, when I'm with my mom all the time, that makes me feel really safe. So I need her there. And it comes from this codependency when if you have parents that were kept you way too close. And now you don't know how to rely on yourself. So you have to rely on other people to feel good. So it creates this anxious part of you. And you need love. You need attention. You need affection. You need affirmation. You need closeness. You need physical closeness. You need words of affirmation, anything from other people in order for you to feel safe. Otherwise, you feel like a threat. You feel like when you're alone, feels so painful. When you don't get affirmed, you feel really scared because when you get that affirmation or when you get it, it feels really good. And that feeling is what lets you know that everything is okay. So in contrast to that other person that's in rigidity that says, if I'm in my feelings, I'm so vulnerable and I'm susceptible to get really hurt. So I can't get anywhere near my feelings because feelings are bad. That equals pain and I'm going to die. And so I need to stay thinking. Whereas the opposite of someone that's more in their chaos and anxiousness, they believe that in order for them to know that everything is okay, that they need to feel safe. They need to feel good. They need to feel loved. They need to feel affirmed and they need to feel attention or connected. And so they rely on other people. They don't know how to give it to themselves again, because they didn't learn that, because someone who was very codependent with a parent or caregiver made it so that let's say for me, let's say that's my life, that I depended on my mom in order to feel good. She never taught me how to be independent and be on my own and regulate myself. I always had to rely on her. So now I'm an adult who relies on people now in order to be affirmed and feel good and regulate my emotions. So the result of this can create a person that is way too in their feelings always, and they're not in their head and they can't cognitively think through things and soothe their feelings. When they're alone, feels terrified. They jump from relationship to relationship. They can never be alone. They're always with somebody because aloneness, again, means pain. It feels really painful. And when they are alone, let's say if they are alone, in order to cope with that feeling that feels so painful, they drink, they do drugs, they overeat, they overshop, things like that. And they start coping like that. And again, this can cause a lot of issues. What they believe, ultimately what a person like this, a person in chaos, feels like they're not enough, they're not worthy if no one loves them. They don't feel valued, they don't feel worthy. So physical or emotional closeness really quells that feeling, and the affirmation and the love, or what looks like love or feels like love or connection. This helps them. And a lot of people, they mistake intimacy like sex with love. And so they'll be promiscuous and they share their body with a lot of people. This is a really, this is a symptom of people that are very chaos in that chaotic, anxious part of them. Again, it causes a lot of issues, right? So these two big extremes of chaos and rigidity. Again, these are other things that I look for in clients. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, I realize it's kind of long, but during this time, I'm sure you can kind of have been spotting yourself in kind of some of these personality traits. And it doesn't mean that you're fully in chaos and really, really rigid. You can switch off. One area of your life you may act more out of rigidity, and in another area of your life, you may be more chaotic. You may be more avoidant in one, more anxious in one, right? And so you can probably, or maybe you're the same in all of them. However you show up, there's no right or wrong there. I also really want to clarify, guys, that there is no right or wrong that this is happening with you. Like, it's not bad that you're in chaos or rigidity. It's not bad that you have anxiety, depression, sadness, anger. It just is. And we have to accept that. Like, where we are now is a result of where we've been in the past. And we really just need to just acknowledge that, okay, so this is going on. And a lot of the work that I do with my clients is really accepting this kind of thing. Because we can tend to feel really bad and we get shameful when we learn that, wow, everything that I've been doing is out of all these behaviors. But I also like to explain this stuff to my clients a lot of the time, because I think it almost like it can put you back into the control seat, because you can say, oh, it's not my fault too. Like I didn't just do this like because I'm lazy or because I'm crazy or dumb. It's like I had this deeper thing kind of running the show. Just to go over again, chaos believes that being in their body feelings are the way that they can detect or know that they're safe. So people who are very anxious believe that feelings are how they know. That's like that's their detection. Like that's their proof of like whether they're safe or not. Do I feel good? Okay, then I'm safe. And someone who makes me feel good, I'm safe. I'm loved. I'm cared for. Okay, I'm worthy. So I'm in connection. So being in connection with our body is really, really good. Rigidity, on the other hand, people who are lean more towards avoidant, this teaches you that being in your brain and thinking and analyzing and planning is safe, because if you're in control, you'll be safe. So you must always be in your brain. You must always be thinking and managing things with your thought. So shut off connection to the feelings in your body, shut off connection to your body. And you feel like you need to be in your brain because it's bad to be vulnerable to other people. And you only get vulnerable when you share your feelings or connect or are, trust other people, right? You're vulnerable when you get close. You're emotionally vulnerable, and you can be, if you're physically close, you can be vulnerable too. Again, neither is bad. They just are. However, you kind of can see yourself in this explanation. But the goal is to get to wholeness. We don't want to be in chaos. We don't want to be rigidity. We want to be what Dr. Daniel Siegel, my mentor, describes as like you want to be floating down the river at like the middle of integration. You want to be able to, if you lean more towards rigidity, you got to come back in the middle of the river. If you lean more towards the side of the river towards chaos, you got to get back to the middle. That's the goal. That's integration. Okay. So let's explain what integration is. So I work on 5 parts of my clients, 5 parts of integration with my clients. There's 9, but I focus on 5. The other ones I'm not going to talk about because this would take forever. And these are the 5 main ones. So there's vertical integration, horizontal integration, memory integration, narrative integration, and state of mind or parts integration. So these are the 5. And let me explain what each of them are. Vertical integration is connection from the brain to the body. So the brain and the body need to be connected. And you could see how people who are chaos, they're all in their body, not enough brain. People who are in rigidity, way too much in their brain, not enough body, not enough feeling. I have clients that will show up and I'll ask them how they're feeling, and they can't even name emotions. They find it really hard to explain any kind of emotion. They speak they're way more explanatory, like with words. They find it really, really hard to describe things just in any, like they don't say, they're just like, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm great. Or it's all right. They don't say like my other clients that are way more in chaos are like, oh, I'm feeling so sad. Today was so bad because I'm feeling this way. And they overemphasize in their emotions. So vertical integration means we want the brain and body to be speaking to each other. We want that vagus nerve to be connecting from the brain to the body. We want that prefrontal cortex online. We want the midbrain. We want the base of that reptilian brain to the body, everything to be really connected and information to be flowing. We also want horizontal integration. Horizontal integration is your right hemisphere is connected to your left hemisphere in your brain. The right is very experiential, very holistic, very emotional, and very physical based. Remember, when the first 18 months of your life, you're all your right brain focused, your right brain oriented, like you only use your right brain. Your left brain is that thinking brain. That's your cognitive features, analyzing, linear thinking, logic, lists. This is the type of brain that likes to think a lot. And we need them both working together and sending messages to each other as well. So they both do the same thing. They just do things differently, but we want our brain to be able to use both capacities. And when you're more in rigidity, you're more in your left brain. And when you're more in chaos, you're more in your right, but we need to be able to use both. So now we want vertical integration. So those need to be integrated and work together. Good linkage there, but separation, we need to be able to separate and use and link up both. Separation from the right and left, and those need to link up. Trauma creates this. Trauma creates the disconnection of both. Okay. To different degrees. Everybody has different degrees. So that's horizontal and vertical. Memory integration is being able to know, have explicit memories and know your implicit memories, or know your, be really aware of your explicit things that have happened in your past. I'm going to pack all these together. Your memory integration, your narrative which is you want a coherent or narrative story of your life that needs to be integrated and be really logical. And you want your states of mind and your parts, all these different fragmented parts, those need to be integrated into your explicit memory. The implicit needs to be made explicit. So all three of those are kind of linked together in a bunch. And basically what that looks like is someone who understands their past, understands what happened to them, understands a logical, autobiographical, way things happened and how they happened and why they happened and acceptance around them. We need to know about these deep implicit parts of us that hold these schemas, and we need to make them explicit. So we need to have conscious awareness of them. And our memory needs to be not fragmented. We need to have a whole memory of our past too. We don't want that in puzzle pieces. So that's the other three parts of integration that we want. And when we have all that integration, that vertical integration from body to brain, horizontal integration from left hemisphere to right hemisphere, and our memory, your narrative story of your past and your parts and states of mind, those are all integrated into explicit, conscious awareness. All of that creates wellness, health, well-being. It creates happiness. It creates emotional regulation. It creates what's called, there's these 9 points that Dr. Siegel references in all his work. He has amazing books. One of the books I can recommend is called Mindsight. And he references these 9 things that emerge out of integration. And I'm going to read them to you really quickly. All right. I'm going to read to you from this amazing book called Being a Brainwise Therapist by Bonnie Badenoch. She's amazing. Dr. Siegel wrote the foreword to this book. She's a therapist who uses all of this work in her therapy practice, and I've learned a lot from her. But specifically Dr. Siegel, because I trained with him. So the 9 things that emerge out of integration, and I'm just going to read the 9 points. I'm not going to explain them all the way, but I will have notes in the show notes tonight. All right, guys. So the 9 things are regulation of the body. So you feel at ease in your body when you get excited, when you get in that sympathetic mode of polyvagal theory. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just when you're in that sympathetic survival state, and when you're in that parasympathetic, that freeze, shut down mode. When you are integrated, whether you're in that sympathetic or parasympathetic, you feel at ease, you feel safe, you can control it. So that's one of the things that emerges from integration. The second one is attuned communication. She says the ability for attuned communication indispensable for establishing secure attachment between parent and child or anybody else rests on our capacity to accurately sense someone else's state and communicate non-verbally and verbally with other people. So what this means is attuned communication is when you are aware of your feelings and your thoughts when you're with somebody and you can sense somebody else's the same way that you're sensing yours. And this is what they use these things called resonance. And it's these things called mirror neurons in our body. And that's another episode. But when you're able to have attuned communication, you're not reactive. You're able to sense somebody else's feelings or thoughts. You can have empathy, you have compassion, you have curiosity. Attuned communication. Imagine that skill, how powerful that skill is. So you don't get reactive and jump off because you think someone's hurting you. You're able to understand, okay, maybe this is going on, right? Such a powerful thing that comes from integration. Regulation of emotion. When I'm going to read this line and I'll kind of explain what she means by this. When our limbic circuits do not have strong integration with the middle prefrontal region, we are vulnerable to wide and sudden swings of emotion as limbic-based perceptual biases rooted in implicit memory repeatedly respond to internal and external triggers. What does she mean by that? Basically, when you get triggered or activated by an implicit bias, by an implicit experience or belief or schema, when something's happening present moment and that part of you gets activated, you have the ability to know that that's happening when you're in integration. Okay. And you're able to calm yourself down. You have awareness of this and you have an ability to be like, oh, I just got grabbed by one of my implicit, past memories or beliefs or parts of me or these states of mind. And okay, yeah, these are the types of things, this experience right now. I know her very intimately and I know that that's what's going on. So I don't get reactive. And so you're able to regulate emotion because you know that that's that's not what's going on in the present moment. It's just this part of you thinks that that's what's going on. And that's why she woke up and is reacting from the past. This is the most important thing that I teach my clients. This is literally, I pride myself in being and knowing how to do this with my clients. I've taught them how to regulate their emotions because my clients, through our work together, get to know all their implicit beliefs. I have an amazing proprietary way of working with my clients that helps them understand all their parts, understand them intimately. So there's like, we're connected to them, but we're separate enough from them to where they don't overwhelm us. And we know whenever they show up, and we're not reactive. And we have this really great regulation of emotion and this attunement with other people. It's like a game changer. And this is what I'm teaching you beautiful women in bloom. So if you want this skill, that alone, it's worth the program. Number 4, response flexibility. This is kind of what I just talked about. The ability to pause before taking action, bring a range of possible responses to mind, evaluate them, and make a decision based on what is most appropriate for the situation often marks the difference between a person being perceived as mature or childishly impulsive. You don't want to be crazy, acting like a little kid, right? So that skill of response flexibility, oh my God, that comes with integration, right? Because the flow is coming, right? Like your brain is talking to both sides of the brain are talking to each other. Your body and your mind are working together. You know what parts of you are being activated. So there's so easy for you to like, before you make a decision and react and act, it's very controlled and like planned out. And you're not just like reacting, more you're being receptive with people. Number 5, empathy. One of my favorites. We all know what empathy is, right? But she says empathy rests on our ability to resonate internally and accurately. Big point there, right? Internally and accurately. Rests on our ability to resonate with another person's state of mind. So we are able to look at someone and understand them and understand what's going on. And it's weird. Like it's a skill that I think really is beautifully does emerge out of integration. I could never do this before. I was a hothead. I could never do this before. And now I can. Okay. Number 6, insight, self-knowing awareness, autobiographical narrative. That's what insight means. That's what Dr. Daniel Siegel has a book called Mindsight. I think it's a play on words for insight, self-knowing awareness and having an autobiographical narrative. So a timeline, a story of your timeline. So it says insight involves our ability to shape and tell our story in a way that is both coherent, so logical, and that maintains emotional contact with its meaning. And I think, this is just such a game changer, right? If you look at your past, like everybody fucked me and nobody was there for me and everybody screwed me up and everybody took advantage of me. And it's not well, it's just like very victim mentality. And listen, I get sometimes we are victims to abuse and things like that. So that I don't use that word lightly, but when you are 50 years old and you're still living from that because you haven't accurately processed and assessed it and understand it with like coherence and this like insight that she mentions. It can just pull you down and you could be feel like a victim your entire life. And it's just not helpful. So insight's one of the things that comes from integration. Fear extinction. Love this. The process of the middle prefrontal region of your brain linking with the amygdala involves carrying those soothing. So basically, you have the ability to calm yourself. The amygdala lights up and then the brain's able to soothe the amygdala and say, hey, we're fine. This is what's going on. Or, oh, okay, yeah, this is scary. We need to take action. We don't freak the F out. Okay. 8, intuition. Probably my favorite. She says this sometimes mysterious capacity may actually be our ability to pay attention to the messages of our viscera. She says these are our stomach, intestines, heart, and lungs. Our body's signals are intimately involved with affective experience, emotional experience. And often the first awareness we have of our emotions comes from a bodily response. So you're more connected to your intuition, to your gut, to your deeper knowing. And number 9, she says, is morality. So she says, it's not surprising that morality is rooted here since moral action, as opposed to ideas about morality. So moral action must surely be a byproduct of our empathic connection with others. So, right, we live with this great moral code, right? Our compass is pointed due north and we're living right by others. We're doing things from a really value-based, ethical way of living, not this selfish, fear-based control management, right? So I love the way Bodhi Badenoch explains that. And so what I also like to call this, guys, is this creates integration, all those 5 ways of being integrated. My goal with people, again, is to get them integrated in all these ways. And there's a lot of things that you need to do in order to help clients get that way. But I have all those tools. And then this creates that. It creates a person that's really whole. And that wholeness, that integration is what Dr. Siegel calls as complexity, is like this really deep wisdom that doesn't come from just like knowledge. It comes from like all the parts working together as a unit, and it makes this complex system. So there's this thing called systems theory, and the way this theory is explained, or the basis of this theory, is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So an airplane is this big, amazing edifice, this thing, right? And an airplane has a ton of different parts: car seats and seatbelts and windows and steel and steering wheels and glass and all these things, right? And each of those things individually are really great, right? Like a window, a chair, a seatbelt, like they're all really, really great. But collectively, they make a freaking airplane that flies through the air and takes people all over the world. Like how complex is that? How amazing is that? So complexity emerges out of integration, out of wholeness, out of health, out of wellness. That's my goal with all of my clients, is I want to get my clients back to wholeness, to complexity. Because amazing things happen when you are whole. I believe what it is like you're connected to God. You're connected to source when you're in your higher self, when you're in that integration, because everything is flowing well through all the systems of the body, the way that God actually intended, that's how you were born. You were born whole. And when you're born whole, you're perfect, right? You're a child of God and you are connected to him, to source. Whether whatever spiritual, entity or thing that you subscribe to, the universe or whatever it is, right? When you're connected to source, you can create anything. You could do anything. And what I love about internal family systems is what they call higher self, or this complex, integrative wellness, complex part of you that emerges out of integration, is they use these 8 words, 8 traits that the higher self has. And they are clarity, curiosity, compassion, courage, connectedness, creativity, calmness, and clarity. I already said that. I don't know. I forget the 8. I'll write them down in the show notes for sure, though. So this is what I do. This is the work I do with my clients. And there's many things that I do to help my clients. So we definitely use memory reconsolidation as our main way that I help my clients get integrated with all their parts, their memory, their narrative. We get their brain and body connected. We get the left and right hemisphere connected well, get that flow going. And the reviews that I have, the testimonials that I have, you guys, when you guys see the sales page that's coming up in a couple of weeks for Bloom, my clients the way they describe themselves is like how I would call that they're like in their higher self, that they're really integrated. There's so much control. There's so much empathy. They trust themselves. They trust other people. They trust the world. That fear is gone. They feel safe in their bodies. They feel secure. They're really clear. They can make decisions. They don't feel like they need to rely on anybody, but they love people because they just love them. They want to be connected. There's not a lot of management and control. They're not in that chaos or rigidity anymore. They feel like they're going down that stream of integration. And it's so beautiful to see. And I can say that I think I see myself the past, 5 years ago, and I was deep in chaos and rigidity in different parts of my life. And I'm happy to say that I tend to be so much more integrated. We all have moments where the past comes and wakes us up and we get reactive, but healing is your ability to do that, to like get back to yourself quicker. Remember, she says like regulation and attunement and flexibility, and you're not having that reactivity, right? You're able to have insight and empathy with people. And so I do feel that way. I thank God every day when I think of all the tools and the things that I've learned to help myself, and now I help my clients with. And if you're somebody that you feel like I described you in this video or in this podcast, and you think that you want to do this work because you want to feel integrated and you want to have all those great feelings that the higher self has, that complexity, I welcome you to join Bloom. This is your invitation. This is for you. I think this program is for people, for women that specifically it's for women, guys, just so you know. Not somebody who is deep, who, if you've never had any type of like, if you've had a really complex trauma, if you have like deep PTSD, if you're really on the edge of chaos and really on the edge of rigidity, you may need to get help from like somebody that's a little bit more skilled than me. So you have you're more high functioning. Like if you have a job and you have relationships and, you know, you're self-sufficient and you can take care of yourself for the most part, and you just have like certain areas of your life don't feel really good. But if you're like on like medication and like anxiety medication, depression medication, and all these different things, I may not be the right fit for you. I'll be really honest. I think you should continue with whatever therapy or psychiatrist or therapist that you're working with. This program is for people that are a lot more high functioning. You've done a little bit of work in some capacity. You aren't really deep in chaos or rigidity. You do struggle with them a lot, but you are feeling that stuckness, and you're feeling like you're doing things that you don't want to do, and you're not doing the things that you want to do, and you're frustrated because it's affecting your life in so many ways, and you want to get more into that integrative, complex, secure, confident state. Guys, and I give that disclaimer because I just really want to be honest about, like, I'm not a doctor or a therapist. I make that abundantly clear in everything that I do, because I don't think that I'm for everybody. And I think when I meet somebody, I ask certain questions purposely so that I have a filter of weeding my clients out, so I know which people are ideal for, you know, to work with me or not, or the people that I can even help. I'll make it really clear if I can't help you. But if you are somebody that's interested in joining, and you don't know, if you're not really clear, DM me, send me a message on Instagram, and we can chat in the DM. But if you feel like you're being called to this work and you feel like, Annabelle, this is totally for me, I welcome you to join the program when we launch in a little while. I think it's launching next week. And I'll be honest, you guys, my assistant Alexa and I have had a couple tech issues, and it might launch a week later, but I'll let you guys know either way. But I do want to put this podcast episode because I do want to let you guys know it's launching in less than like 3 weeks. And I'm really excited to get you guys to start working with you guys, to get you guys onboarded and you guys get access to all the material. We're going to get you knowing yourself in such a deep way. You're going to have that deep, beautiful, coherent narrative. You're going to have great implicit and explicit memory integration. I hope that you're going to get a lot of great information about your parts. You're going to get to know yourself deeply, and you're going to be less in that chaos and rigidity, and you're going to be rigidity, and you're going to be able to navigate that stream of integration a lot more. And that's the work we're doing in Bloom. So if you're a coach and you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, Annabelle, this is like super interesting, I want to know more. I will eventually be working in some way with coaches, but it's just not going to happen now. That's in the future. But I do think that the work I do is different than other coaches, because we're not just talking, we're doing experiential work. And that's the only way that you get to all these parts of us that are implicit and deep. And, it's very different than what other coaches do. It's transformational change. It's really true transformational change. My clients tell me every single day how great they feel, how it's effortless now to just maintain it. And, that's how I feel. And I hope that if this speaks to you, I'll see you in Bloom and you'll join. So I know this was a lot. I'm literally writing all the definitions in the show notes so you can have them. And if you have any questions, please reach out. But I hope this episode served you, and I can't wait to work with you in Bloom. I'll see you then.